When my son slapped me for the first time, it did not feel real. It did not even feel painful. It felt quiet, like something inside me simply folded and fell asleep. I still remember the morning light coming through the kitchen window. I was washing the dishes, moving slowly, enjoying the warmth of the water on my hands. My daughter-in-law sat at the dining table, scrolling through her phone. My son had just come home from his night shift, tired and frustrated. It was the kind of peaceful, ordinary moment that should have meant nothing. But life has a way of changing in one breath. She looked at him and said in a soft but sharp voice, "Your mother touched my things again. I told her to stop." I turned around, surprised. "I only moved the laundry basket so I could sweep the floor," I said quietly. My son did not ask for explanations. He did not ask what really happened. He walked toward me with the heaviness of someone carrying someone else's anger. And then it happened. A slap. Light. Fast. Almost clumsy. But enough to shake my heart. I froze. My hands were still wet. A small sound escaped me, like a breath breaking in half. My daughter-in-law looked away. My son stood there, breathing hard, as if he had solved a problem. He said, "Just listen to her. Why do you always cause trouble?" I wanted to ask him when I ever caused trouble. I wanted to ask him if he remembered the nights I stayed awake when he was sick, the days I worked extra shifts so he could go on school trips, the meals I skipped so he never had to. But my voice stayed quiet. He walked away. She followed him, and I stayed in the kitchen, holding the edge of the counter, trying to steady myself. Later that day, he slapped me again. And again. 13 times in total before the sun set, each one smaller than the last, as if even he grew tired of it. I did not cry. I did not shout. I simply stepped back into myself, like a person walking into an empty room. That night, I sat alone in the living room, listening to the soft ticking of the wall clock. The house I bought, the house I sacrificed years for, felt like a stranger's place. I whispered to myself, maybe he is just stressed. Maybe this was a mistake. But deep in my heart, something had already shifted. Something had quietly broken. I did not know yet that the path ahead would lead me to selling the very house he once called his dream. I only knew one thing. A mother's love can take many things, but it cannot take silence forever.
The days after those slaps felt strangely calm, almost too calm. Not because things were better, but because I had gone silent inside. Sometimes silence is not peace. Sometimes it is just a place where the heart hides until it feels safe again. I kept moving through the house like a guest who was afraid to touch anything. I woke up early, cooked breakfast, swept the floor, and kept my eyes lowered. My daughter-in-law walked past me without a word. My son avoided looking at me too long. He only spoke when he needed something. It was as if that day, those 13 slaps had pressed a reset button on my identity, from mother to servant. One morning, I placed tea on the table for them. My hands were shaking slightly, not from fear, but from something deeper, disappointment, loss, a tiredness that does not show on the face but weighs on the soul. My son said without looking up, "Mom, don't go into our room anymore. Just stay in your space." My space was a small corner of the guest room where I kept my bag under the bed and my folded clothes on one tiny shelf. I nodded. I did not argue. Arguing felt pointless now. My neighbors sometimes stopped by to say hello, and I would smile as if nothing was wrong. I even joked once, "Oh, children get busy after marriage. This is normal." The truth stayed locked inside me. But at night, when everyone else was asleep, I would sit on the porch with a warm shawl around my shoulders and think. I would think about the little boy who once held my hand tightly when crossing the street, the boy who cried on the first day of school until I promised I would wait for him at the gate, the boy who said, "Mama, when I grow up, I'll buy you a big house." And now here I was, living in that house, yet feeling homeless. One evening, my son's friend came to visit. He looked surprised to find me wiping the kitchen counters late at night. "Auntie, why are you cleaning so late?" he asked. Before I could answer, my daughter-in-law walked in and said sharply, "She likes to stay busy. She gets bored." The young man looked at me, then at her, and I saw a flicker of concern in his eyes. For a moment, someone saw me, not as a burden, not as an inconvenience, but as a person. After he left, my son scolded me. "Next time, just stay in your room. Don't embarrass us." Embarrass them. The word hit me harder than any slap. That night, while everyone else was asleep, I stood in the hallway and looked at the rooms, the walls, the memories built into every corner, and a small thought came to me, soft but growing. This house may not be my home anymore, but it is still mine. A seed of courage had been planted. I didn't know yet how it would bloom. If you enjoying the story and it touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe for more emotional real-life stories. As the weeks passed, the house felt colder, even when the sun streamed through the windows. Not the kind of cold you feel on your skin, but the kind that settles deep inside your chest. Every small moment added another layer to that coldness. My daughter-in-law began leaving little notes for me on the kitchen counter. "Do not touch this. Do not use this pan. Do not enter the laundry area." The notes were short, sharp, and written in a hurried hand. They looked harmless, but each one felt like a tiny cut. I never argued. I would read the notes, fold them quietly, and put them in my apron pocket. I did not know why I kept them. Maybe to remind myself that I wasn't imagining everything. Maybe to remind myself how far things had changed. One afternoon, while I swept the living room, I overheard them talking in their bedroom. "She needs to know her place," my daughter-in-law whispered. "She will. She just needs time," my son replied. "Know my place." The words stayed with me for the rest of the day, echoing softly, like someone tapping on a closed door. I tried to stay out of their way. I made myself small, moving quietly, taking smaller steps, closing doors slowly. I cooked only when asked. I ate alone in the kitchen while they ate in the dining room. But even then, small things became reasons for tension. One evening, they returned home earlier than usual. I had cooked dinner, hoping to make a peaceful night for everyone. But my daughter-in-law walked straight to the stove and lifted the lid of the pot. "You used too much salt again," she said coldly. I hadn't. I knew I hadn't, but I simply nodded. My son sighed and looked at me with the same tired frustration. "Mom, please try to listen." "I will," I whispered. I cleaned the kitchen after they ate. Their plates were untouched, as if my food had become something inedible just by being made by my hands. Later that night, I sat on the edge of my bed with a soft ache in my chest. I wasn't angry. Anger needs strength. I simply felt empty, like someone who had misplaced herself somewhere. The turning point came quietly. It was raining that night, soft rain tapping against the windows. I walked to the living room to close the curtains when I heard them speaking again. "She is too old to be living with us," my daughter-in-law said. "She has nowhere to go," my son answered. There was a long pause, then her voice, sharper this time. "Then maybe she should figure something out." Figure something out. Those words felt like a door closing. I stood there for a long moment, listening to the rain, and for the first time in months, I felt a small spark inside me, a spark of dignity I thought I had lost. I whispered to myself, "I will figure something out," and I meant it. The next morning, I woke up before sunrise. The house was still. wrapped in a soft gray silence. I moved quietly to the bathroom and washed my face, letting the cool water clear my thoughts. When I looked up and met my own reflection, I barely recognized the woman staring back. Her eyes looked tired, not from age, but from carrying too much sadness. Her shoulders were slightly bent, as if life had pressed down on them little by little. Her smile, once warm and full, had faded into something faint and unsure. But beneath that tiredness, I saw something else, a small light, a small voice inside me saying, "You deserve better." That morning, I made tea for myself and sat on the porch. The air was cool, and the sky slowly turned from gray to pale gold. I let myself breathe, really breathe, for the first time in months. As I wrapped my shawl around me, memories came back. Memories of the strong woman I used to be. The woman who raised a child alone. The woman who worked 2 jobs and still packed her son's lunch every morning. The woman who saved every penny to buy this house, the very house they now treated me like a visitor in. Those memories reminded me I was not weak. I had only been quiet. Around mid-morning, my daughter-in-law walked into the kitchen. She didn't greet me. She opened the refrigerator, sighed loudly, and said, "You didn't buy the groceries I asked for." She had never asked. "I didn't know," I replied softly. "Well, you should try to remember," she said, closing the fridge door harder than necessary. My son came out of the bedroom a few minutes later. He looked irritated, already in a bad mood. "Mom, please try to do things right. It stresses us out." Do things right. As if my whole existence was now wrong. I wanted to tell him that I used to do everything right, until the day he forgot I was his mother, but instead I simply nodded, like I always did. Later that afternoon, I went to the small storage room. I opened boxes I hadn't touched in years, old documents, receipts, files from when I bought the house. The papers smelled of dust and time, but they also smelled of something else, truth. There it was, my name, only my name, on every document, every receipt, every signature. The house was legally mine, only mine. I sat down on the floor, holding the papers against my chest. For the first time, I felt something stronger than sadness, clarity. This house was not a gift for my son. It was my life's work, and I had allowed them to use it against me. When I closed the storage room door, I walked with a different step. Not bigger, not louder, but steadier. That night, while they slept, I stood in the middle of the living room and whispered to myself, "You are not trapped. You have choices." And that simple truth gave me strength I had forgotten I had. If you enjoy the story and touch your heart, please like, share, and subscribe my channel for more emotional, real-life stories. The day everything changed started quietly, like most important days do. I woke up early, made myself a simple cup of tea, and sat by the window. I watched the sunlight spread across the floor, soft and gentle. Something inside me felt different, calmer but stronger, like a storm had passed, leaving behind a clear sky I hadn't seen in a long time. My son and daughter-in-law were still asleep, and the house felt peaceful without their tension in the air. I walked to the living room, opened the curtains, and let the morning light fill the space. For a moment, the house felt like mine again. But reality returned as soon as they woke up. My daughter-in-law came into the kitchen first. She didn't say good morning. She rarely did. She opened the fridge, scanned the shelves, and let out her usual sigh. "You didn't buy the milk," she said sharply. "I didn't know we were out," I replied quietly. "Well, you should keep track," she snapped. A few minutes later, my son walked in, still sleepy, still irritated. He didn't look at me when he spoke. "Mom, please don't make things harder. Just try to be more responsible." Responsible. As if I hadn't been responsible my entire life. I felt something shift inside me, slowly, gently, but unmistakably. I realized their words didn't hurt the same way anymore, not because they were kinder, but because I was stronger. I placed the dish towel down, wiped my hands, and turned to them. My voice was calm, steady, almost peaceful. "I need to talk to you both," I said. They looked at me with mild annoyance, as if I were interrupting their day. I continued, "I've been feeling unwelcome here for a long time." My daughter-in-law crossed her arms. "We never said that." "You didn't need to," I replied softly. "Your actions said enough." My son frowned. "Mom, what are you trying to say?" I took a slow breath. My hands were steady. My voice didn't shake. "I think it's time I live separately." The room fell silent. My son blinked in confusion. "Where will you go?" "I will find a place. I'm capable." He stepped forward. "Mom, don't be dramatic. You can stay. Just don't create problems." His words no longer pierced me. They simply floated past, like leaves carried by the wind. I looked at him, really looked at him. The boy I raised was gone. The man standing before me didn't see me anymore. "I'm not leaving because of drama," I said gently. "I'm leaving because I deserve peace." My daughter-in-law muttered, "Fine, do whatever you want." But I wasn't finished. I reached into my pocket and held up a folded paper, the property document I had found earlier. "This house," I said quietly, "is mine." Her eyes widened. My son froze. I didn't say more. The truth was enough. That evening, I packed a small bag, not in fear, but in freedom. The days after I showed them the property papers were strangely quiet. Not peaceful, just quiet. My son barely spoke to me. My daughter-in-law moved around the house with a stiffness in her steps, as if she was afraid the floor might shift beneath her feet. For the first time in months, I didn't feel small. I didn't feel invisible. I felt aware. Aware of my strength. Aware of my choices. Aware that the life I had accepted wasn't the life I deserved. I spent a lot of time sitting in the living room, the papers safely folded inside my shawl. My son would walk past me and look like he wanted to say something, but the words never came. Maybe he was ashamed, maybe he was confused, or maybe he simply didn't understand how deeply he had hurt me. One afternoon, I heard them whispering again in their room. "What if she throws us out?" my daughter-in-law said, her voice trembling for the first time. "She won't," my son replied. "She's not like that." He was right. I wasn't cruel. I wasn't revengeful. But I was done being silent. That evening, I sat at the dining table with a notebook and a pen. I wrote down everything I wanted in the next chapter of my life. It wasn't much, just peace, space, and dignity. I didn't need luxury. I didn't need noise. I just wanted a small place where I could breathe without fear of stepping wrong. After dinner, I called them both into the living room. "We need to talk," I said calmly. My daughter-in-law sat down slowly. My son stood behind her, arms crossed. "I'm not throwing you out," I began. "This house is still yours to live in, for now." My son let out a sigh of relief. "But," I continued, "I am making changes, starting with myself." They both looked up. "I've decided to sell the house," I said. The room froze. My son's face drained of color. "What? Mom, no, you can't just—" "I can," I said quietly, "and I will." My daughter-in-law's mouth opened, but no sound came out. "This house has become a place of pain for me," I said gently, "and I don't want to spend the rest of my life walking on eggshells inside something I built with love." "But where will we go?" my son asked, his voice suddenly small. I looked at him with a softness he didn't expect. "You are grown. You can build your own home, like I once did, alone." He didn't have an answer. I stood up, walked to the hallway, and gently touched the wall, a wall I had painted myself years ago. Memories lived in every corner, but memories weren't enough to keep me trapped. "I will sell it," I repeated softly, "and I will start again." For the first time in months, the power in my voice didn't come from anger. It came from freedom. If you enjoying the story and touch your heart, please like, share, and subscribe my channel for more heartfelt, emotional stories. The morning after I told them I was selling the house, the air inside felt heavy. Not with anger, but with the weight of truth finally spoken. I woke up early, made tea, and sat in my usual spot by the window. The sun rose slowly, touching the floor with soft gold, like it was reminding me that new beginnings often arrive quietly. My son came into the living room, his face pale, his eyes tired. He stood there for a moment, looking at me as if searching for the right words. "Mom, can we talk?" he finally asked. I nodded. He sat across from me, elbows on his knees, hands clasped tightly together. He looked smaller somehow, like the boy he used to be, not the man who had hurt me. "I didn't know you were so unhappy," he whispered. A part of me wanted to laugh softly. A part of me wanted to cry. Instead, I said, "I was unhappy because I kept pretending I wasn't." He lowered his head. "I never meant for things to get this bad." I watched him carefully. His voice wasn't angry. It wasn't defensive. It was tired and fragile. "What happened to you?" I asked gently. "When did you forget who you were? When did you forget who I was?" He didn't answer right away. After a long silence, he said, "I think I let other voices become louder than yours." He meant his wife, but he didn't say it. Just then, my daughter-in-law stepped into the room. Her face was red, eyes swollen. She had been crying. She walked toward me slowly, hesitating with every step. "Auntie," she said softly, "I'm sorry." The words hung in the air like something delicate and unexpected. "I never wanted things to go this far," she continued. "I was overwhelmed. I didn't know how to share a home. I didn't know how to share him." Her voice cracked. For the first time since she entered my life, she sounded human. Not sharp, not defensive, just lost. I looked at both of them, my son, broken by guilt, and my daughter-in-law, trembling with regret. A strange mix of emotions filled me. Pain, disappointment, but also a quiet understanding. "I am not angry," I told them. "I am hurt, deeply, but not angry." My son reached for my hand. "Mom, please don't sell the house. Give us one more chance. We will treat you better. We will change." I looked at his hand in mine. Warm, familiar. A touch I hadn't felt in months. "I don't want revenge," I said softly. "I want peace, and I want you both to grow from this." "But will you stay?" my daughter-in-law asked, her voice unsteady. "Please?" I took a long breath. "I will finish my decision soon, but either way, things will not be the same as before. That chapter is gone." Their eyes filled with fear and regret. But inside me, something else grew. Clarity, strength, and the quiet courage of a woman who finally remembered her worth. The next morning arrived softly, with a cool breeze slipping through the curtains. I woke before anyone else, as I often did, and walked slowly through the house. My house, for what felt like the last time. Not because I had decided to leave, but because I wanted to see everything clearly before choosing my path. The walls, the floors, the little marks from years of living, they all held memories. Some sweet, some painful, some that still made my heart ache. I touched the corner of the dining table where my son once did his homework. I stood by the kitchen counter where I had cooked countless meals. I looked out the window where I had watched him play as a child. And then I walked to my room, the room where I had cried in silence, whispered prayers, and rebuilt my strength piece by piece. I sat on the bed and closed my eyes. It was time to decide. A few hours later, my son and daughter-in-law found me in the living room. They both looked nervous, as if they were preparing themselves for a verdict. My son spoke first. "Mom, we meant what we said yesterday. We want to do better. We want you to stay, please." My daughter-in-law nodded quickly. "I'll change, I promise. I don't want to hurt you anymore." I listened quietly, my hands resting on my lap. Their voices carried real emotion, but apologies alone do not heal wounds. It takes time, effort, and genuine change. I looked up at them and said gently, "I heard your words, and I believe you mean them, but this house, it doesn't feel the same to me anymore. Not because of the walls, but because of what happened inside them. My son swallowed hard. So you're still going to sell it? I paused, letting the silence settle before I spoke again. The truth is, I'm selling the house, but not out of anger, not to punish you. I'm selling it because it represents a life I've outgrown. Their eyes filled with tears. My daughter-in-law covered her mouth with her hand, trying not to cry too loudly. I need a fresh start, a place that feels peaceful, a place where I wake up without fear of being treated as a burden. My son stepped closer. Can we still visit you? Can we still try to fix things? I nodded. Of course, I'm not leaving your lives. I'm only leaving this chapter. I folded the papers on the table and stood up. You both have your whole lives ahead of you. Build your own home, build your own memories, and build them with kindness. My daughter-in-law whispered, "Thank you for not giving up on us." I smiled softly. I never gave up. I just remembered myself. A few weeks later, the house was sold. I moved into a small, peaceful apartment with sunlight in every corner. My days became quiet, calm, and finally mine. And even though I started again with very little, I had everything I truly needed: freedom, dignity, and a heart that had learned to stand again. Thank you for listening to this emotional journey. Please like, share, and subscribe my channel for more heartfelt real-life stories.